Welcome to On the Firing Line on the information station, AM 1440 KUHL. Information, education, news, and politics of firearms and ammunition is found here. If you have any questions, call us at 1-888-625-1440. That's 1-888-625-1440.
Senate Bill 53, De Leon's ammunition purchase permits would require that anyone who purchased ammunition would first be authorized by the State Department of Justice to do so. A fee would be charged for the authorization, which would require passage of a background check. Authorization would be valid for 2 years, after which it would have to be renewed. This would apply to all ammunition and would reinstate the following provisions of law that were previously enacted but did not take effect because of a court ruling that the definition of handgun ammunition used was unconstitutionally vague. Ammunition sales will only be made in a face-to-face transaction, thus making internet and mail order ammunition sales illegal. The vendor would have to record personal information, obtain a signature, thumbprint, the brand, type, and the amount of ammunition purchased, which would be recorded for each transaction. The purchaser would then be checked by the Department of Justice to determine if he or she is prohibited from owning firearms and ammunition. Senate Bill 53 will apply to all ammunition, rifle, shotgun, and handguns.
You are on the firing line with Joe, Matt, and Kanani. Be a part of today's show by calling 888-625-1440, or if you're in the local Santa Maria area, please call us at 928-1440.
That's right. And don't forget, you can always go on our Facebook page. Kanani and I are always adding stuff to that page, as well as Matt. And you can find us. It's On the Firing Line with Joe, Matt, and Kanani. You can also look at today's outline. We put it up usually about 2 o'clock every Saturday. And you can get the phone number there if you missed it. And, of course, during the show, we'll put it out again. And we do want to give thanks to all those who do help support our show and do go on the Facebook page and like different articles that we post up. There's a lot of good stuff on there.
Yeah.
All right, today is going to be sort of a continuation of last week. Last week we had talked a little bit about the Joyce Foundation in regards to changing the Supreme Court's justices' minds by presenting information that they would find in articles and research and trying to change their point of view about things. And so I promised last week that I would bring this article in about the Joyce Foundation. And it's got some interesting facts. A lot of people don't put it together or put the connections together. And Kanani has also went and done some more research and found even more connections that go outside of it. This is not something that just happened once. This is something that it's like a spider web. It reaches out everywhere and ensnares all kinds of stuff.
Funny you say spider web because the picture that I found looks kind of like a spider web.
But it's good stuff. And we really want everybody out there to kind of get the picture, and if you can pass this picture along to everybody else, and I don't mean a literal picture, I mean the idea. You can pass this along to people you know. You'll have the information to be able to fight this battle to help us keep our Second Amendment, keep it strong. And in doing so, you're not just fighting for the Second Amendment, you're keeping the Constitution strong. The Constitution is something that all of our Supreme Court justices should be making decisions upon. It's okay, and it's not unheard of for them to go back and set new precedents, to change the precedents that have been set by looking and doing their own research and understanding the Constitution for what it stands for. I mean, after all, I think Kanani and I were talking, there's only so many constitutional rights. It's not that big of a job to do your research and understand what each one means and where the ideas came from, what they meant at the time they wrote. They weren't written like lawyers write things today. They were written with common sense, with values behind them and things that would stand the test of time.
Right. I mean, even though the times have changed, the intention of that original statement and those bits of the Constitution and those amendments aren't going to change their meaning, even though they seem to be attempted to be reinterpreted over and over again.
And you know, it's in the intentions of interpretation is to rewrite the Constitution.
Yeah.
It's an agenda, let's face it. In that agenda, we cannot stand idly by and do nothing about. We must stand up and fight. That's just like we were saying with the NRA. It's great that they go out and they fight by going to the courts and trying to get things overturned and stuff like that. But the truth of the matter is if they asserted their power before it got to the courts, before these things happened, then maybe all of us would have a better decision and a better vote, and there wouldn't be that 180,000 votes for somebody like Yi. I mean, hello.
Well, I think across America, there are a lot of people, though, that are doing some research, but in many cases, those 180,000 here in California didn't do anything. They didn't look up anything.
100%.
I mean, I think the NRA members are more astute than, the average Joe.
That's true. And we do find that in these types of groups. But you got to remember, it's a constant battle because the other side is constantly trying to villainize,
Yeah, they seem to always be kind of up on their game and always not one step ahead, but they're always ready to fight and to argue and to jump up. And sometimes I don't think that our side is as quick to.
That's true. It's hard to remember it's okay to kick the chihuahua when it's nipping at your heels.
Yeah, sometimes it is, especially when it's ruined your shoes.
Right. So, again, we started the show out, of course, with SB 53 because we wanted you to remember that is something that is being voted on this month. It may have already gone up the line a little bit further. It's something that you have to fight. You can go all over the internet and get your representatives' phone numbers, email addresses, contact them, send them faxes, send them emails, phone calls, the whole works. Fight this thing. If they don't hear enough response, and especially from people in their own areas, because all they care about are their constituents in their own areas, instead of the responsibility of the whole state, I think it's never going to go anywhere. This stuff is just going to get pushed through and ramrodded each time. It's just the way it's going to work.
Yeah, and I think that's where the opposition does always have somewhat of a benefit, I guess. I mean, I kind of use that loosely, is that they are calling and they are saying you need to vote in favor of SB 53 in this case.
And the sheep follow suit right in because they don't know any better.
Yeah, they get their 5 friends to do it, and now you've got 6 people, and we're still kind of sitting going, I'll get to it. Oh, maybe I'll do it. Oh, what is my voice going to be? But I think in some ways, if you've got, thousands and thousands and thousands of our side calling, they're going to be those little ticks on the paper of saying, 40 people called today and said vote against it. And only 20 people maybe called and said vote for it.
Right. Very, very good point. And that's the truth. We deal with that a lot in the schools. You remember there was a time when children rebelled against the teachers and everything and always did the opposite. Now we have the teachers and the schools brainwashing our children so much into the liberal ideals that the children are for it. And so they get these phone calls from their supposed peers and they follow suit and they do exactly like Kanani said. They show up in the millions or thousands and they do vote because somebody called them and said, hey, this is what you should do.
Yeah.
And these people are only pleading to their heart, not realizing for these children that they need to be listening to themselves through education of the Constitution and world history.
Well, part of that education is challenging what their teachers are telling them. If anything, just for the exercise of knowing what are their ideas out there and getting them to form their own ideas.
Well said. I mean, that's just it. It's by challenging that you get growth. That's the way it works in this world.
Yeah.
All challenge gives growth. All right, so that's our introduction for today's show. We do want to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to jump right into this because this is going to be a great show. We've got a lot of great stuff to present for you guys today, so stay tuned. We will be talking about the Joyce Foundation and the connections with many other things throughout our administration that exists today. All right, we'll be right back on the firing line.
You're listening to On the Firing Line on the information station.
This is On the Firing Line with Matt, Jim, and Joe. We will be right back with you on the firing line. If you have any questions, give us a call at 888-625-1440 or in the Santa Maria area, 928-1440. Don't forget, you can always listen in on am1440.com.
Tactical Guns and Gear is the Central Coast leader in tactical rifles, pistols, shotguns, and accessories. Building an AR-15, they have lower receivers, parts kits, trigger groups, and a ton of other AR parts from the most popular companies and stuff.
They are also the home of the Women's 101 Firearms and Women's Advanced Pistol classes and have trained thousands of local ladies.
The store is located off the 101 freeway in Santa Maria near the North Broadway exit. Look for the big rifle sign on the freeway as well as the giant 5-ton Tactical military truck, and they're now open on Mondays. America!
On the Firing Line is happy to have Law Offices of Christopher Coleman as a sponsor. The Law Offices of Christopher Coleman is located in Santa Barbara on 2019B State Street, specializing in personal injury and, more importantly, the Second Amendment and On the Firing Line with Matt and Joe. Give them a call at 805-682-3352, serving the Santa Barbara, Santa Maria, and San Luis Obispo areas for over 25 years.
Have you been looking for a new or used motorcycle or all-terrain vehicle?
With a staff that has a combined 270 years of experience to inspire and help you make that informed decision.
Santa Maria Motorcycles is your one-stop shop, and their mission is to provide you with that ultimate experience.
They also have rentals, so you can take that ride you have been dreaming of up the coast.
They're located at 2022 Presker Lane in Santa Maria, or give Chris and his team a call at 805-928-3668. Again, that's 805-928-3668.
We're happy to have a special guest here today at the Plumbing Talk Studios, Jeremy Griffin, owner of Griffin Plumbing in Orcutt. Welcome, Jeremy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So, Jeremy, the reason your plumbing company is called Griffin Plumbing is that your last name is, in fact, Griffin.
Yeah, that's right.
Unbelievable! Griffin, just like the legendary creature with the body of a lion and the wings of an eagle.
Yeah.
What a brilliant move, Jeremy.
I'm a genius.
To name your plumbing company after this majestic creature. A creature known not only to have divine power, but also to be a protector from all things evil.
Well, it is my last name.
Audience, listen carefully. If your plumbing devices are threatened in any way, I implore you to seek the power and protection of the Griffin.
We're always here to help. Just give us a call.
Call the Griffin.
Find us at callgriffinplumbing.com or call 934-1949.
You are on the Firing Line with Joe, Matt, and Kanani. We are back. Kanani and I. Matt is not here today with us. He's with family. Of course, our hearts go out to you, Matt. Make sure everything's good there with the family, and get back soon. We want you back. Hey, before we go into this article at the Joyce Foundation, there's a point that has been made to me that actually makes a lot of sense. In the swaying of people, remember we talked about the schools swaying and everything else? One thing we didn't mention was the media.
How the media affects schools and what's being taught?
How it affects the voters.
Oh, tons.
Tons and tons and tons. As a matter of fact, that's probably even bigger than the schools, because if you think about it, I mean, it's just like Israel and Hamas. Mm-hmm. All I hear is the demonizing of Israel and Hamas. I mean, heck,
and the victimization of Hamas.
Yes, which is totally opposite of the truth and what's reality.
Yeah.
And anybody who can't see that, oh, I'm sorry, I feel sorry for you. But then again, do I?
Well, I mean, I think you've got something going there, because, I mean, how many times have we heard a jingle from a commercial and it just sticks in your head and that's just what you remember? So every time you see something that is either that product or kind of reminds you of it, that's like the first thing you think of. Right. So if they're brainwashing you into believing something and keep telling you over and over again, or say it in a really clever, way, or with a song, you're going to remember that, and that's when you go to, to vote, or you're talking to your other friends, that's what you're going to use.
That's just like with Hamas and Israel.
Yeah.
Wolf Blitzer's out there saying, yes, Israel is at war, or instead of using the actual terms of whatever is going on, and also saying, and then CNN's always saying, Israel has bombed innocent people. It's like, hello, tell the rest of the story.
Yeah, there's more going on there. When Hamas decides to put their artillery and launching things out of a hospital and then invite all of the refugees to stay in that hospital. And then Israel bombs the hospital that is actually an active Hamas site.
And
what
then
are you supposed to
shooting
do?
rockets off from parks where kids are, not letting the kids leave, different things like that. I mean, there's a lot of underhanded stuff because they don't care.
There's a lot more going on.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, if I was Israel and I was the president of Israel, I would have put the boot right there. Stomp. All right, back to today's stuff. As I said last week, I would find the article about the Joyce Foundation influencing the Supreme Court by planning articles that were used for research. Now, keep this in mind. Research and analysis conducted by legal scholars and historians can assist courts and policymakers. Research can examine how the language of the Second Amendment was developed, interpreted, and applied to specific types of law throughout the nation's history. Scholars can also consider and recommend to courts appropriate ways to analyze Second Amendment cases on the basis of existing principles of jurisprudence, including standards of review. Of course, to me, I think that's hogwash. They should be doing their own research. They should be going back and taking a look at the actual writing, where the commas are, where the periods are, and then going back and look at other papers that these people that wrote the Second Amendment or any other constitution, what they had said back then and how they thought. That would have gotten them a lot further and helped them make decisions that are in the best interest of America and keeping America strong. All right, but it goes on. Once a study is completed, researchers should consider publishing findings in forums that are easily accessible to judges and policymakers. In addition to peer review, biomedical or social science journals, researchers might also consider secondary publication in law journals or reviews available to legal databases, which, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly what the Joyce Foundation did, and they did a little bit more than just that. So, I guess the best thing I can do is kind of read you some of this article. Kanani and I will break into some of it and explain a few things that we've found out and just kind of let it go, because this is amazing.
Well, maybe you could start out, or maybe I'll start out to tell you what exactly does the Joyce Foundation do. I mean, they started over in the early 90s, and they were initially founded in Chicago, and their purpose was to come up with programs to help the people in the communities there, specifically in education, employment, environment, gun violence, money and politics, and culture. And like we were talking before we went on the air, is that that's a little bit of every single thing that is in everybody's lives. I mean, you can't quite get away from being educated or trying to find a job, living in the environment. I mean, gun violence, maybe not, but when Chicago has the highest rate of gun deaths and illegal firearms, that's kind of a pretty critical piece in the puzzle, let alone money and politics, and everyone has their own culture. So they sort of have their hand in every part of everyone's lives.
Right, but there's a reason why they have their hands in everybody's lives. There's an agenda behind them. Number one, they want to kill individualism, which is one of the things that makes America so great. I mean, without the individualism, we wouldn't have some of the great scientists. And yes, I know some people are out there saying, yeah, well, we got all our great scientists from Germany. But the truth of the matter is, America has presented a situation where we have had some of the greatest people, and they do come here. And when they come here, they're allowed to prosper and grow and do so many great things. And even you, as a child out there, you know the old story, you can do anything you set your mind to. Well, if that ideal is killed, you're like what I said before. I don't think I said it on the air, but to Kanani I was saying, okay, that's like the worm eaten into the core of the apple. And Kanani goes, yeah, the apple looks so good on the outside, but on the inside we know it's rotten right at the core.
Yeah.
All right, so Joyce Foundation uses law reviews to influence SCOTUS decisions. This article was actually written October 6th of 2008 by David T. Hardy. So it's been a while, and this was actually before, Obama has had so much time to, give change and hope. But it kind of sets the stage. Granted, the stage was set a long time ago with his radical buddies and stuff like that doing terrorist acts. But here we go. Here's a post that this guy made at the APS where it caught little attention. It's not a sexy story, but it's important. Seems Obama and his cohorts had figured a way to influence the judiciary when it comes to the Second Amendment without having to go to court. Law reviews are evidently well researched and thoughtfully written, all while being done on a shoestring budget. Enter Stage Left, a well-funded leftist organization set on destroying the Second Excuse me. The Second Amendment. The recent Heller decision, whereby the pro-Second Amendment forces chalked up a W, is instructive. We won by a skinny vote, yet anti-second arguments were cited 4 times in the court's dissenting opinion. I never knew the court would be influenced by what is, essence, students of law. It also sheds new light on Obama's resume, whereas light as it is, he emphasizes his experience as editor of Harvard Law Review. Okay? As a presidential candidate, Barack Obama must demonstrate executive experience, but he remains strangely silent about his 8 years as a director of the Joyce Foundation. That was from 1994 to 2002. A $1 billion tax-exempt organization. He has one obvious reason. During his time as director, Joyce Foundation spent millions creating and supporting anti-gun organizations. There is another less-known reason. During Obama's tenure, the Joyce Foundation Board planned and implemented a program targeting the Supreme Court. The work began 5 years into Obama's directorship, when the foundation had experienced its turning its millions to anti-gun grassroots organizations, but none at converting cash into legal scholarship. The plan's objective was bold. You know, before I go on, that's an amazing point right there. Here, Kanani's telling us that they were given money to do inner city programs and get kids off the streets and be a part of these different things. But instead, what did they do with the money?
They put it towards anti-Second Amendment research and other groups. And actually, this is a kind of a good spot to pause, because one of the other things I found about the Joyce Foundation was their list of organizations that received funding and support from them listed under activist and advocacy support. So there are some here that aren't gun options, like the Alliance for Justice, Citizens for a Safer Minnesota Education Fund. Then they've got a long list of groups that are against handgun ownership and or promoting the ineffectiveness of handgun violence education. There's the Education Fund to End Handgun Violence, Handgun Free America, Help for Survivors, Illinois Council Against Handgun Violence, the Indiana Partnership to Prevent Firearm Violence, Indiana Partnership to Prevent Gun Violence. It kind of sounds like the same group, both 2 names. The Iowans for the Prevention of Gun Violence, Michigan Partnership to Prevent Gun Violence, the National Association of State-Based Child Advocacy Organizations, PACS for New York, WAVE Educational Fund, and the Ohio Coalition Against Gun Violence. And none of these are listed under their gun control research group. This is all advocacy support.
Isn't that something?
So their advocacy recipients are all anti-gun groups.
Well balanced, aren't they?
Very well balanced.
It's amazing. Put the dots together and you start finding out so much more. And it's important that we take the time to do that. Look, I'll go on. The plan's objective was bold: the judicial obliteration of the Second Amendment. And ladies and gentlemen, you all know as well as I do, we lose the Second Amendment, we lose all other amendments, because there's no way to protect the rest. Joyce's directors found a vulnerable point. When judges cannot rely upon past decisions, they sometimes turn to law review articles. Law reviews are impartial and famed for meticulous site checking. They are also produced on a shoestring. Authors of articles receive no compensation. Editors are law students who work for a tiny stipend. In 1999, midway through Obama's tenure, the Joyce Board voted to grant the Chicago-Kent Law Review $84,000, a staggering sum by law review standards. The review promptly published an issue in which all articles attacked the individual right view of the Second Amendment. In a breach of law review custom, Chicago-Kent let an outsider serve as editor. He was Carl Bogus, a faculty member of a different law school. Bogus had a unique distinction. He had been a director of Handgun Control, Inc., today's Brady campaign, and was on the advisory board of the Joyce-funded Violence Policy Center, one of those other places there. Bogus solicited only articles hostile to the individual right view of the Second Amendment, offering authors $5,000 each. But word leaked out, and Professor Randy Barnett of Boston University volunteered to write in defense of the individual right to arms. Bogus refused to allow him to write for the review, later explaining that sometimes a more balanced debate is best served by unbalanced symposium. Oh my God.
I would only say that would be true if the one side was never, ever, 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 ever heard. But that's not the case. I mean, the Second Amendment, you always have both sides are represented because there's always people who feel strongly on either side of that debate.
Well, when it comes to the Second Amendment, there really should only be one side.
Well, it's the side of the Second Amendment.
And I guess, no, I don't want to even leave it open for debate because that's where the dissension comes from. That's then we get false debate, like what the media does and what our some of our professors do in different schools and stuff like that. So is it something open for debate? Is the Constitution open for debate? No, it was something set in stone. It's the law of the land. It's the supremacy. It's the thing that gives us what we are. How do you take away from that? How do you debate that?
I don't necessarily know if it's maybe open for debating of a right or wrong because it's exactly what it says it is. But I think there should be some way to have a discussion about it. Even though I don't agree with them.
Okay, I suppose discussion is okay, but it still leads to, the clouds come in, and pretty soon you're thinking about things. It's almost like people used to say about the Bible. If you listen to ideas aside of what you're trying to learn and become a part of, you're going to be swayed at some point. You're going to have questions, and those questions you don't need.
But shouldn't there be questions to help strengthen your belief system?
Shouldn't you be able to educate yourself by being able to go out and read and find out what it meant? And that would be the debate. Does this mean this by... Actually...
Are you debating amongst your own self, or are you seeking out other ideas to debate with other people?
It's interesting. I guess it would be always a debate amongst yourself.
So how do you expect to grow?
Well, you grow by education, right?
But you need other ideas, though, as well.
Yeah, okay, I can see where I'm kind of going against what I said earlier.
Yeah, you totally are. I'm so coming around to that.
I still, but when it comes to the Constitution, I mean, what debate is there? Is the debate really what did they mean? Or is it this is the meaning and do you agree with me?
Yeah, maybe. Because they even debated it back and forth when they first put it in there. Because there's people who didn't agree with that the Second Amendment should have been in there.
Who was that?
Didn't they go back and forth between those who had written it and those who didn't?
They went back and forth a little bit on the way it was written. And I think a lot of that was to make sure that the states didn't hold the right over it, that the federal government did, because it was one of the few and limited things that the government did have some control over. I don't know. Does that make sense? What do you think about that, Jim?
There wasn't really that much debate on it because gun in that time, the first 5 amendments weren't that difficult to write.
They were pretty simple.
Yeah, because they already had those in mind. Because you weren't allowed really to have too many guns.
That's why the
hunting,
Lexington, right? Or the raid where they went and they got the...
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, you're right. Yeah, was that Lexington?
Yeah, oh God, I could have the name wrong.
It's in Kentucky, but I don't know where. Anyway, there wasn't that much debate about it. The First Amendment was real easy because that's why they fought. They wanted their own, voice and stuff like that. Second Amendment was because of the militia and stuff like that. Because the king was coming in and just taking over. I mean, just completely taking over people, just like they're trying to do right now. Mm-hmm. If you look at the media right now, you guys didn't fail to mention something that really angers me a lot. If you watch ABC, NBC, or CBS in the mornings, they are 100% pro. Capital.
Right.
Whatever comes out of the Capitol, they believe in. I was laughing with my wife yesterday morning. George Stephanopoulos was stepping over himself, trying to apologize for President Obama sending 2 500-pound bombs on ISIS on Thursday. Is that right?
Yeah.
It's true. My wife is sitting here, and she goes, he agonized over it. He argued about it, and they show this like he's having this intense kind of meeting with somebody outside getting in the car. And you don't know what they're talking about. You have no idea.
Right.
I mean, the camera's like 200 feet away.
That's the bait and switch of the magical world of media.
And if you read in the paper today about Measure P that's coming out, they had yes and no, and now they're suing the no's because it's not written right. So I understand where you're coming from, because 6 through 10 were really difficult things to put them in order and stuff like that. I remember that. I'm talking back, high school days that I remember all this. But yeah, the first, second, and third, fourth, and fifth were pretty easy.
Pretty
yeah,
easy.
Because they would kill you if you didn't say what they wanted you to do. You could lose your life.
They were coming in and kicking people out of their homes, killing them, doing all kinds of
The only thing
stuff.
they weren't killing was children, but they were killing men and women. Yeah, they were. So that's why the Fifth Amendment's so important. That you have the right to remain silent, man. You have the right to not self-incriminate yourself. You have that right.
And it also the First Amendment, why we have the right to be able to speak out.
Well, the big reason is because let's face it, the Mayflower Compact was all about Christendom and bringing free rights for people to say what they wanted to say, because the crown ran the religion.
Right.
So that was pretty cut and clear. But there was some pretty intense things. Did you guys see the great show that was on? It was about 3 or 4 years ago, maybe more than that, about the writing of the Declaration of Independence and the war and you don't know what these people went through. They were losing their hair and stuff. I'm not kidding you. They were agonizing. Families would be against one another. We can't war against the king. Yes, we have to, kind of a thing. It was really, really difficult. That's why the writing and the signing and everything kind of clarified things. Again, you had people like Jefferson and Washington and Adams and a lot of people. They were just really for it. I mean, they were brilliant men, and they really put together a good. I believe probably one of the best documents that's ever written. And that's just my opinion, and I'm sure that we would agree. And that's why people have. It's so hard to really come against the Second Amendment because it's so rock solid, even though they're trying. I hate to take up all your time like this.
No. What you're saying, it makes a lot of sense. It's good to listen to it and get that perspective for both of us, and it kind of puts a balance between what we're talking about amongst ourselves here too. So it's good to hear this stuff.
But you can see the way how politics is just kind of like, what do I really want to say? I want to say like it's turned into like a snake or something to me. To listen to see how our president of the United States was where he was and where he wasn't. He ruled his life, and now that these people, $400,000 to these think tanks that want to go against the Second Amendment, things like, you think to yourself, oh my gosh, are we really living this way?
It's unheard of.
That's not what the people want.
No,
that's an agenda that's driven political thing, and that's why we broke away from England.
Exactly. It's hard for people to get the points. Look, most everybody in America does want a better America, right? But it's so hard sometimes to break out of the mold, to break out of the preconditioning, and really
fear.
There is fear. It's just like you said during the times of the Revolution. Can you imagine today stepping up and saying, "Yes, I'm going to fight against the National Guard, or I'm going to fight against the government and the army if it steps in"?
Well, let's just say Canada.
You'd be like, "Oh no, I'm not going to do that. How can you do that?"
Or Mexico would be the same thing.
Right.
It's sovereign countries that are kind of wanting to rule against us. Right now, obviously we're having some immigration problems that will probably get ironed out. But at any rate, it's the same thing. There's people living in our community.
You've got Perry fighting against the government, in his own state. I mean, that's a huge...
And Colorado.
And
right
Colorado.
Now, Colorado's really up in arms because a lot of these kids got shipped up there.
Huh, interesting. All right. Let us continue on. Bogus, of course, who we've been talking about, solicited only articles hostile to the individual right view of the Second Amendment, offering, again, I say, $5,000 to each of the authors. That's heresy. All right.
Blatant heresy. Yeah.
It is. Let's go on, though. The Joyce Foundation apparently believed it held this power over the entire university. Glenn Reynolds later recalled that when he and 2 other professors were scheduled to discuss the Second Amendment on campus, Joyce's staffers objected strenuously to their being allowed to speak, protesting that the Joyce Foundation was being cheated by an agenda of balance that was inconsistent with the symposium's purpose. Joyce next brought up an issue of Fordham Law Review. The plan worked smoothly. One court, in the course of ruling that was no individual right to arms, cited the Chicago Kent articles 8 times. Then, in 2001, a federal court of appeals in Texas determined that the Second Amendment was an individual right. The Joyce Foundation Board, which still included Obama, responded by expanding its tack on the Second Amendment. Its next move came from Ohio State University and announced it was establishing the Second Amendment Research Center. as a think tank headed by anti-individual right historian Sal Cornell. Joyce put up no less than $400,000 to bankroll its creation. The grant was awarded at the board's December 2002 meeting. And Obama's last function as Joyce director, in reporting the grant, the OSU magazine Making History made clear that the purpose was to influence a future Supreme Court case. What case do you think that might have been? Heller? Exactly. The effort is timely, a series of test cases based on a new wave of scholarship, a recent decision by a federal court of appeals in Texas, and revised Justice Department policy are working their way through the courts. The litigants challenged the court's traditional reading of the Second Amendment as protection of the state's rights to organize militia, asserting that the Second Amendment confers a much broader right for individuals to own guns. See, again, the reprogramming right there. We've gone through this on the show many a times.
Yeah, and this was their entire plan from the start, was to change the way the politics and law read the Second Amendment. Right. I mean, they're even talking about things that haven't even happened yet.
Right.
To talk about winning future cases, and to put this, what was it called, the Second Amendment Research Center, they put almost $500,000 to it so that they could change the way the Supreme Court ruled.
And it worked. I mean, listen to the people you get into conversations with today.
Yeah.
People are citing these things as if that's the way it was meant to be.
Right.
And then they're coming up with information to back it up, and you can guarantee that that's all rooted from the Joyce Foundation.
Well, they said that the Chicago Kent articles were referenced 8 times in the ruling.
Yes.
That the articles that they had actually put the money towards, that's $84,000 to solicit arguments against the Second Amendment, 8 of them, or 8 of the points made in there, were brought up in their ruling.
Unbelievable. And you know, it doesn't stop there. What's the newest thing, the newest and latest thing we've heard about firearms and how they are going to attack them and curtail the ability for you to even be able to have them? Kanani went and found the research earlier, and it's all about
a public health issue.
Right.
Yeah, we talked about that a couple months ago.
And it's in the Obama health care.
In the Obamacare.
Yeah. It's been brought up. He's come this far. I mean, how?
Was that maybe 20 years now? Maybe?
Yes.
From his start as being a constitutional law professor to joining this Joyce Foundation as a director, influencing his personal opinion into what they want to do, and then now coming around to potentially now the Heller case to influence that. I mean, it's kind of just been one long, I don't even know really how to phrase it, where he's involved in every single step of this. And now that he's president, he can put all of these small plans into action into his presidency.
It's almost as if he's using our own things against us to destroy us, in a sense. You can imagine if he was a law professor, which, you know, I don't think his grades were that great. And if they were, wow, he sure's done a great job, hasn't he? But think of this. They've taken, if you read the Federalist Papers, which, as I've recently been notified here on the phone, that the Federalist Papers are where our Second Amendment comes from. And it was because the British were disarming the people in Boston, okay, which is something what we were trying to say earlier. We just didn't quite get it out the same. But we didn't want that to ever happen again. We knew that that was the way to stop that the British were going to use to stop the insurrection, or as we call the revolution. So we can't let that happen again. And here we see a group with an agenda that wants to disarm us so that they can get the agenda put straight across. They want a communist country, a socialist communist country. And that's what it boils down to. And if we allow ourselves to roll in the flowers of that ideal, we're going to be there forever. There's no way out of it without a country being destroyed, and we have to start all over again. And do you think we'll have those great minds to come up with these ideas again and ideals? Do you think anybody will be smart enough to go back and grab the old Constitution and say, wow, this is it. We've got to make this strong?
Yeah.
Do you think?
The one thing about this is the big thing that they don't look at is the actual facts. it's like global warming right now. I just watched a great thing about global warming. It was really, really cool. It was fun to watch, and it was really interesting because if you lived in the late 60s, early 70s, you know what it was going to be?
Global cooling.
We're gonna have we're gonna have another. They were saying we're gonna have another freeze.
Right.
Basically,
another ice age.
Polar ice age. Right. Exactly. Well, they said more than that. They were saying that that the actual ice will come down into America. That. So it's really stupid. I mean, not stupid, but they really believed that. People. Really, long story short is now once they get this thing rolling and get the fear factor in there. That's where it really changes a lot of people's minds and stuff like that. And
you got the media just gulping it up and using that hype to get more listeners, get more readers,
right,
and get more. I don't know what they call it, but it's ridiculous because, as you and I both know, the scientists then, the scientists now don't know for sure what the hell's going to happen.
That's what was really fun to watch this one that I was watching. Like I was saying, a lot of people don't look at the statistics. The statistics is that we're in a heating trend, which happens all the time. I mean, you go cooling, heating, cooling, and that's all we're really in. Is like, and this one isn't even as big as we had in the 30s. The 30s was a huge one,
right?
And we're not even going to be close to that one. So they won't look at the statistics. They won't look at Chicago. They won't look at St. Louis, excuse me. They don't look at the statistics when guns are not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. I used to watch
it's agenda-driven,
the death clock, which showed every few seconds that was saved by a firearm. And that clock was continuously clicking away. Lives saved by firearms, lives saved by firearms. But these people want to count not only the deaths of the innocent, but the deaths of the guilty, but the deaths of the innocent. Anytime a police officer pulls his gun out, that's another statistic. That was a gun violence. And it's ridiculous.
And I don't want to take up a lot of your time, but it goes to point this young lady who was killed. She was in a car accident, and she showed up at a guy's door, I guess all bloody and everything. The guy thought she was trying to break in because she was pounding on the door. Well, he shot right straight through. I thought she pulled the screen door off, trying to get in the house, but she didn't. He shot through it. So he was convicted of murder. So that thing was huge in all over ABC, NBC, and CBS. I mean, you couldn't pass up one of the morning shows without it being on there and how the trial is going and everything else. So yeah, they really put it in your face about this, gun violence like that.
They do, and it's terrible. All right, we really should take our second break of the show. So we're going to be right back with you. We're going to try to finish this up. We do have some more stuff here to read to you, a little bit about the Joyce Foundation and some more about some of the decisions made by the Supreme Courts. So we'll be right back with you on the firing line.
We'll be back to more of On the Firing Line with Joe and Jim after this.
This is On the Firing Line with Matt, Jim, and Joe. We will be right back with you on the firing line. If you have any questions, give us a call at 888-625-1440 or in the Santa Maria area, 928-1440. Don't forget, you can always listen in on am1440.com.
Tactical Guns and Gear is the Central Coast leader in tactical rifles, pistols, shotguns, and accessories. Building an AR-15, they have lower receivers, parts kits, trigger groups, and a ton of other AR parts from the most popular companies and stuff.
They are also the home of the Women's 101 Firearms and Women's Advanced Pistol classes and have trained thousands of local ladies.
The store is located off the 101 freeway in Santa Maria near the North Broadway exit. Look for the big rifle sign on the freeway as well as the giant 5-ton Tactical military truck, and they're now open on Mondays. America!
On the Firing Line is happy to have Law Offices of Christopher Coleman as a sponsor. The Law Offices of Christopher Coleman is located in Santa Barbara on 2019B State Street, specializing in personal injury and, more importantly, the Second Amendment and On the Firing Line with Matt and Joe. Give them a call at 805-682-3352, serving the Santa Barbara, Santa Maria, and San Luis Obispo areas for over 25 years.
On the air with the Midnight Mystic is one of our regular callers, truck driver Charlie.
Boy, I just seen another one, Midnight Mystic.
Another Griffin, Charlie?
I'm telling you, they're all over the Central Coast now.
How long have you been on the road now, Charlie?
2, 5, 8 weeks, I don't know.
Perhaps you should park the truck and get some sleep, and maybe the Griffins will disappear.
Well, there it is again. I'm going after it.
What does it look like, Charlie?
Holy mackerel. It's got the body of a lion and the head of an eagle.
Is it flying, Charlie?
It's on the side of a white truck.
Is it a Griffin plumbing truck, Charlie?
Could be. I don't know. I'm pulling right up to it.
We seem to have lost contact with Charlie, but I'm sure he'll be okay because Griffins, just like the good folks at Griffin Plumbing, are here to protect and serve. In fact, if your plumbing devices are threatened in any way,
Call the Griffin.
Find us at callgriffinplumbing.com or call 934-1949.
You are on the firing line with Joe, Matt, and Connie.
That's right. You're back on the firing line, and Kanani and I are here to entertain you today.
I'm here.
And of course,
wait a minute. You're throwing a bone to me once in a while. Yeah, I'm here.
Jim is definitely always here, and he's definitely a part of the show. Don't ever forget that. As a matter of fact, have you looked at our Facebook page?
No,
you know you're right up there with us.
Sorry.
There's
yeah,
all four
our banner
of us.
is that great picture of all of us that my husband took.
Oh yeah, that
it's
was
a really
cool
good
picture.
one.
That was fun. Yeah,
Yep.
that's fun. It's a fun show. Hey, I like this show. It's one of my favorites I've ever done.
I learned so much on this show.
So do I.
And it's amazing.
It brings
I love
back a
doing
lot
this.
from my college and high school days. Well, I was a history major, so it's like, I didn't do it when I was in college, but when I was in high school, I took all the history classes, and I was one of those type of people who couldn't wait for the civics test.
Well, okay, then I've got one for you.
I'm serious. I wanted to do well on that.
This was texted into me by somebody. It says, maybe we'll be able to defend ourselves with a strongly worded document authorized by the United Nations if Blueberg and his friends get their way. Would the average citizen feel safe?
Yeah, Blueberg.
Bloomberg.
Yeah, we should say blue. 'Cause he is blue.
Blueberg. Yeah, I got a case
red.
of the Bluebergs.
Case of the Bluebergs.
Well, but, that goes right back to what we were talking about, right?
Yeah.
Let us pray to God. And outside of California, because I guess maybe I am kind of swayed because I do live in California. All I hear and feel is all this negativity because we're always fighting against this, right?
Yeah.
Maybe there is enough outside of California that will keep America strong and we'll never have to deal with this. But I'm still thinking that the worm's eating his way into the core.
Well, I mean, it probably is, but we need to be sure that we go and, get our little pocket knife and cut that worm out.
Heck yeah.
Well, the other thing is that, we're going to get a little turnaround. I think there's going to be a little turnaround this time in elections, too. I think we're going to, not we, but I think the Senate will turn. And I absolutely know the House is going to gain more. We got to get rid of our local representative. Did you see what she just now proposed? She proposed another new tax.
Miss Caps?
Yes, Miss Caps. Wonderful Miss Caps. I love her.
What's the new tax?
Every spoonful of sugar is what it's called.
What?
So it's a sugar tax.
What?
No, I am not kidding you.
They're going to tax sugar again?
This is they're the Democrats in the House, which they're in the minority, so they won't get past the. It won't even get through. It won't even get through committee. I mean, forget it. It won't even get written, really. But still, there she was. She doesn't do very much, in my opinion. But when it comes to a tax, boy, she's standing right there.
Do we have to wait for these people to die of old age before we can get new people in to make a difference?
No.
16 years she's been in
Oh,
the
my
House. Do you know
God.
that? She's voted the #1 nicest person in the House of Representatives
Are you kidding me?
every year.
I gotta feel good.
She has her tea and her cookies and does absolutely nothing else but
You know,
taxes.
I'm sorry, I'd probably be guilty. I'd be like going over to her office cutting cookies.
Right, yeah. Well, she's right downstairs, so anytime you want to visit, she's right downstairs.
I want cookies.
That's true, folks.
That's the quickest way to my heart is give me cookies.
Yeah.
It's true, though, Jim. You're right. Her office is right below where we're talking right now. They do have an office in this building. Of course, it is always locked, and there's a sign up that says, "This door will remain locked. Make an appointment to see us." Sorry, no walk-ins.
Yeah, and I have to go around every Saturday and open the side door so we can get in because they locked the front door.
They're trying to keep us out and away from the radio show. I'm telling you.
But yeah, unless we pay a tax. You can't go to Osaflaco Beach, now, without paying your $5 tax.
Oh my gosh.
And she loved that one. She stood up there, so yeah, we should do this. Yeah, it'll help. I said, we're already paying for it. It's a county.
It's a county park.
We're paying our
Hello?
taxes for it. What's $5?
Yeah, for somebody who has enough money.
Not only that, but it's not just that. I mean, if it's $5 here, it's 50 cents here, it's this, it's that, it's this, it's that.
Where does it stop? It never
doesn't
does.
stop. It doesn't. Just like when they say it's only 1%, but it's 1% that you say we're going to get. But each time somebody has to pay that, or we have to pay it more, it turns into 20% to us.
You know, this is the difference between large government and small government.
It's just like these bullets, you know? It's just like this guy with the, De Leon, you know? Well, it's only a little thing that you really should, you're thinking, you know what this is really going to cost the government to do this? Pretty soon a bullet's going to be $100.
You're absolutely right. That's exactly how they're going to get rid of it. They're going to tax us out of it. Maybe they won't call it a tax, but you can guarantee that that's what it's going to be.
It is a tax. What are you going to call it? Oh, getting more emails?
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I saw that.
Constantly getting texts here from different people with different ideas. And this person actually texted and said, the reasons for the Second Amendment are simple guarantees. Are simple guarantees balance of military power, right to self-defense, citizens' ability to, let me get into the text here a little bit further, citizens' ability to repel foreign invasions and enables the citizen to overthrow and take a tyrannical government.
Well, it's the only amendment that has a actual physical piece of property that ensures our freedom.
It is. You take that away, right. You can't do this.
Amendment.
But think of this. In order for a tyrannical government to be set in place, they have to take away our First Amendment. Mm-hmm. They have to take away our Fifth Amendment.
Oh, they're trying to take away our First Amendment.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And then the Fourth. And then it just spreads out from there. But they can't touch any of them as long as our Second Amendment is still strong and we can arm ourselves.
Yeah.
That's just a simple fact. And nowadays we have so many people that have left the ideal of protecting yourself behind because there's somebody else to do it for you. They've fallen right in line with the larger government. You know what? It was never designed for that. You were supposed to be able to protect yourself. The more that you give up your ability to protect yourself, you're looking for an ideal of a better safety, which you don't deserve anymore after that. You're supposed to do it and have the ideal set in your own mind, in your own heart. That's like I watched videos of Christians over there in Iraq in stuff being slaughtered.
Oh, yeah,
these people sit there, and it just happens to them. They don't fight back one little bit. I tell you what, I'll be fighting to my last breath.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
At least I would hope that I am. I'm not going to sit there and let somebody just whack my head off and do nothing. I'm going to be trying to hold that knife away and trying to take it away from them and using it against them.
Well, ISIS was going to massacre 40,000 people, estimated about 40,000 people. If we wouldn't have came in with a couple of 1,000-pound bomb, you know.
They're still going to... What about all the people they've already killed?
Oh, my gosh. Hundreds and thousands. Oh, it's crazy. It's just crazy. These guys are going nuts.
And this reminds me of World War II. Who was the guy that was in charge before Churchill? Oh, gosh. I forget what his name is. If somebody can come up with that. But he was the guy that didn't want to get involved in World War II, didn't want to do anything. And then what happened next? We had atrocities that happened across the board that we didn't even know about until World War II was almost over with. These are the things that are going to happen and are happening now unless we are prepared to fight the long battle. And terrorists, I'm sorry, religious terrorism is at the top. I wouldn't even stand for Christian terrorism.
Well, the ISIS groups over there, they are completely fanatical. I mean, there's just nothing that's going to stop them.
No, there's nothing. Thank God we have the Constitution that allows for us to have our own religion. Mm-hmm. And we can all get along knowing that the other person can believe what they want so long as they don't push it on me.
Yeah. Or they take my right away to be able to do what I want.
Right. It's okay to talk to me about it, but don't tell me I have to do it one way or another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I don't think, like I said, nobody wants someone else to force their beliefs and tell you that you have to do it this one way, and that's the only way to do it.
This is true.
I mean, the difference with freedom is you can do what you want, and that is the way. That's it. Like, what a concept, right?
Hey, what do you think the Joyce Foundation or President Obama is going to go after once they're done with the Second Amendment? You think it's all over with and everything's just settled?
No.
You think they'll instill something else?
Oh, yeah.
What are they going to... The Fourth. They're going to go after the Fourth. What's the Fourth?
In other words, you have to have a warrant to be searched.
Right.
Yeah.
They've
already been doing that.
Yes, they're already whittling on it. Think 20 years from now. This took, from Joyce Foundation, it took him 20 years to get this far.
Yeah.
Go 20 years in the future. Remember, the Constitution were ideals and the law of our land set for something that would last for as long as we could hold it together.
Yeah.
And these
And they've
laws that
lasted
are made
for 200 years.
right.
Girl.
These laws that are made today are made for today's touchy-feely and have no ideals for what tomorrow is. Unbelievable.